Imagine a machine that, well, it doesn't just calculate faster, but actually reaches into the fundamental fabric of reality to pull out answers.
Yeah, it's a completely different paradigm.
Right. A machine so wildly powerful that the complex algorithm securing your personal bank account right now, they could be broken in the time it takes you to brew a cup of coffee.
Exactly. We are talking about a leap in technology so profound that it makes the jump from the abacus to the microchip look like a rounding error.
That is the reality of the quantum era.
Yeah, we are standing at the absolute edge of computation. We're shifting from the familiar, highly predictable world of silicon chips into this totally alien landscape, the wilderness where basically probability entirely replaces certainty.
And that is exactly where we are taking you today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm thrilled to be here with our expert to explore the literal next frontier of human capability.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get into this.
So today, we are drawing directly from Nishant Prabhakar's 2026 book, The Next Frontier, investing in quantum computing, alongside some really brilliant insights from his companion work, The Compute Shift.
Two incredibly dense but essential reads.
Definitely. And our mission today is to decode exactly why classical computing is hitting a physical brick wall, to understand this deeply strange language of quantum mechanics, and, to explore how this technology is reshaping the global economy, national security, and your own digital safety.
Yeah, the stakes couldn't be higher.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because this isn't about giving your laptop a slightly better processor, right? This is about building a machine that computes using the fundamental laws of the universe itself.
Right. And to really grasp the magnitude of what we are building, we first have to talk about why we even need to build it. Like, why are classical computers failing us?
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah.
Because we've had a good run with silicon.
We've had a great run. For over half a century, the entire tech industry has relied on Moore's law.
Right. The idea that chips just keep getting better.
Exactly. It's the observation that we can reliably shrink transistors, packing more and more of them onto a chip to double computing power every couple of years.
Yeah.
And we got so used to this trajectory that we treated it like gravity.
Like it would just happen automatically forever.
Right. But it's not a law of physics. Eventually, you hit a hard physical limit to how small you can carve a switch out of silicon.
And we are basically at that limit right now, aren't we? I mean, modern transistors are literally just a few atoms across.
They are. It's mind-boggling. And when you shrink a physical barrier down to the atomic scale, classical physics just breaks down.
It stops working.
Yeah, the rules completely change. At that tiny scale, electrons stop behaving like obedient little marbles bouncing off walls. Instead, they act like waves.
Okay.
And they start doing something called quantum tunneling. Because the physical barrier of the transistor is so impossibly thin, the electron essentially just slips right through it as if the wall wasn't even there.
Wait, really? It just teleports through the barrier.
Basically, yeah. The hardware literally can't contain the electrical current anymore. And because of that, the heat generated becomes utterly unmanageable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, nature itself is actively resisting human intention here. We haven't just run out of ideas. We have literally run out of physical room for silicon.
So the hardware is maxed out, but reading through Prabhakar's work, it seems like the issue is actually even bigger than that. It's not just a hardware problem, right? It's a math problem.
The math problem is the real wall. I mean, classical computers, even the absolute most massive supercomputers on Earth, they absolutely choke on what are called combinatorial problems.
Okay, combinatorial. Break that down for us.
A great example of this is protein folding. So, in biology, the specific way a chain of amino acids contorts and folds itself into a 3D protein that determines everything about its function.
Right.
It determines whether that protein is going to be a life-saving, targeted cancer therapy or, completely useless.
But calculating those folds, I mean, that isn't as simple as just adding numbers together.
Not at all. The number of ways even a relatively small protein can fold is astronomically huge. If you tried to use a classical computer to calculate every single possible configuration,
Checking them one by one.
exactly, sequential processing style, it would literally take longer than the age of the universe.
Wow.
Yeah. And adding more classical processors to the server rack doesn't solve it. The math simply explodes faster than the hardware can ever scale.
That's insane.
That is the classical wall. And that is exactly why the scientific community had to pivot and turn to the qubit, the quantum bit.
Okay, let me try to translate that into an analogy for you, the listener. If we think about a classical bit, the foundation of every computer we use today, it's like a coin sitting flat on a table.
Right, heads or tails.
Exactly. It's either heads or tails, a 1 or a 0. It's binary, it's clean, it's certain. But a qubit is totally different. A qubit is a spinning coin.
I love that analogy.
Right. While it's spinning on the table, it's just a blur. It isn't meaningfully heads or tails. It's a blend of both possibilities at once.
Yes, and physicists call that state superposition. Because that spinning coin hasn't been forced to decide if it's heads or tails yet, it can represent an entire landscape of possibilities simultaneously.
Which is how it handles the explosive math.
Exactly. But the real magic, the really crazy part happens when you introduce a second quantum property to those spinning coins, which is entanglement.
Oh, man. Entanglement.
Yeah. Einstein was so unsettled by entanglement that he famously called it spooky action at a distance.
Because it makes no sense intuitively.
None. If you take two of those spinning qubits and entangle them, measuring or interacting with one instantly defines the state of the other, no matter how far apart they are.
Without any physical signal traveling between them.
None at all. They operate as a single unified system.
That is wild.
It is. And in the context of computing, this is completely revolutionary. It means you aren't just processing one possibility at a time anymore. An entangled system of qubits weaves immense complexity together naturally.
So it can look at the whole picture at once.
Exactly. It explores vast landscapes of data simultaneously, doing in a few seconds what would take a classical supercomputer literally millennia to grind through.
Okay, but I have to stop you there because, from a purely practical standpoint, this sounds impossible.
Fair enough.
I mean, if a qubit is as delicate as a spinning coin, wouldn't the absolute slightest vibration from the room or a tiny temperature fluctuation or even just a stray molecule of air drifting by?
It would ruin it, yes.
Right. Wouldn't that just knock the coin over?
Yeah.
How is this anything more than a theoretical physics experiment?
That fragility is the central challenge of the entire industry right now. The phenomenon you're describing is called decoherence.
Decoherence.
Yeah. Qubits are so incredibly sensitive that the slightest interference from the outside world causes them to lose that beautiful quantum state and just, collapse back into a boring classical 0 or 1.
So the coin falls over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because of decoherence, we are currently living in what the industry calls the NISQ era.
And NISQ stands for
Noisy intermediate scale quantum. Our current quantum machines are sort of like a stage full of brilliant, virtuoso musicians playing this complex symphony.
But they keep getting distracted.
Right. They keep losing their rhythm after a few measures just because, someone in the audience coughed.
Oh, that's frustrating. But here's where it gets really interesting, because that exact fragility has kicked off this massive, high-stakes hardware race to build the physical foundation of these machines.
It's the ultimate engineering challenge.
And nobody actually agrees on the best blueprint to do it. Reading through the sources, there are 4 completely different ways scientists are trying to keep these spinning coins from falling over.
Yeah, and each approach is an incredible feat of extreme engineering. So the first and most well-known modality is superconducting qubits. These are the ones championed by giants like IBM and Google.
And to make those work, they have to use these massive room-sized dilution refrigerators, right?
I do, because remember, thermal energy is basically just atomic movement.
So heat is movement.
Exactly. Any heat at all creates noise that destroys the qubit. So they have to chill these superconducting loops to temperatures hovering just a fraction of a degree above absolute 0.
That is insane.
It is. That is literally colder than the empty void of interstellar space, just to keep the environment quiet enough for the qubits to spin.
Which sounds absolutely exhausting to maintain. But then, on a totally different track, you have trapped ions.
Trapped ions are fascinating. So instead of building artificial circuits, scientists use perfectly calibrated lasers to suspend individual floating atoms inside a total vacuum chamber.
Just floating there.
Just floating. It is incredibly stable, and the qubits last a long time, but as you can imagine, manipulating individual floating atoms is basically like performing microscopic surgery with light.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's hard to scale up to millions of qubits.
It's extremely hard.
Then you've got the third track, which is photonic networks, and this one blew my mind. They are using single particles of light photons traveling through optical circuits.
Right, and the dream there is blistering speed and, leveraging all our existing fiber optic technology.
But the sources note there's a catch, right?
A big one. Getting 2 photons to actually interact with each other in a meaningful way is notoriously difficult. They really like to just pass right through each other.
Like ghosts.
Pretty much. And finally, you have neutral atoms.
Oh, the tweezers?
Yes. Here, they use grids of highly focused laser beams, often called optical tweezers, to grab hold of uncharged atoms and arrange them in flexible, three-dimensional geometric patterns.
So you can literally drag and drop atoms into different shapes to run different calculations.
You can. It sounds like pure science fiction, but all four of these modalities are operating in labs right now.
But even with all this brilliant engineering, we are still essentially in the vacuum tube era of quantum computing. The hardware is primitive.
Very primitive.
So the ultimate goal that every single one of these companies is racing toward is a concept called fault tolerance. Because, to go back to our spinning coin analogy, we know the coins are going to fall over,
Decoherence is going to happen. It's unavoidable.
which means you have to build a system that can correct its own errors faster than the errors occur.
Precisely. And the math shows that to do this, we will need millions of these fragile physical qubits working together in a massive array just to create a few perfectly stable, error-corrected logical qubits.
Right. It's like, okay, think of it like trying to carry a single drop of water across the Sahara Desert without it evaporating.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
You can't just carry the drop on your finger. It'll vanish.
Yeah.
You have to surround that single precious logical drop with millions of physical drops just to absorb the heat, take the damage, and act as a shield so the core information survives the journey.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. We are literally trying to build that protective shield right now.
So, assuming we manage to build that shield, if we finally achieve fault tolerance, what do we actually do with it? Because, I mean, nobody's spending billions of dollars and chilling a room to absolute zero so we can render web pages faster.
Definitely not. We use it to solve the unsolvable. And this brings us back to a really brilliant observation made by physicist Richard Feynman all the way back in 1982.
He saw this coming.
He did. He pointed out a glaring contradiction in how we were using computers. He said, look, nature itself is fundamentally quantum. The universe operates on probabilities, wave functions, and subatomic interactions.
Right.
So if you want to accurately simulate the natural world, you can't use a classical machine that only speaks in rigid ones and zeros. You need a quantum machine that actually speaks nature's native language.
I love that framing. Trying to simulate a complex chemical molecule on a classical computer is basically like trying to play an entire grand opera using a single violin.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You can approximate the melody, you can get the basic idea across, but you lose all the depth, the harmony, the actual physical reality of the piece.
Exactly. But when we switch to quantum algorithms like the variational quantum eigensolver, or VQE, which Prabhakar highlights in the book, the game changes entirely.
What does VQE actually do in practice?
VQE is an absolute game changer for chemistry. With algorithms like that, pharmaceutical companies won't have to spend a decade blindly guessing and checking chemical compounds in physical labs.
The trial and error phase.
Right. They will be able to simulate millions of complex drug molecules virtually, atom by atom, seeing exactly how they fold, how they bind, and how they react before a single test tube is ever touched.
It eliminates years of guesswork.
It does. But it's not just medicine.
Right, it extends way beyond that.
Yeah, material science is, at its core, just the study of how electrons interact at the quantum level. With these exact same simulations, we could purposefully design room temperature superconductors that would revolutionize the global power grid.
Or better batteries.
Exactly. We could design perfect battery electrolytes that never degrade over time, which would completely transform how humanity stores and uses energy.
So we use it to perfectly simulate the microscopic world. But naturally, that begs the question, if we have this incredible simultaneous processing power, can we apply it to macroscopic human problems? Like the absolute chaos of global supply chains.
We can. And algorithms like QAOA, the quantum approximate optimization algorithm, are built exactly for this.
QAOA.
Yes. Human commerce is largely defined by what computer scientists call NP-hard problems.
Wait, let me pause you there. NP-hard for the listener. That basically means an optimization problem where adding just one or two more variables causes the difficulty to explode exponentially, right?
Precisely. The math gets so dense that classical computers just give up. Think about global shipping routes.
Okay.
A single cargo ship traveling from Mumbai to New York has millions of potential routing permutations when you factor in changing weather systems, port delays, fluctuating fuel costs, and vehicle capacities across the fleet.
And a classical computer can't process all that.
Not even close. Classical computers can't check all those routes, so they just use heuristics. They guess, they find a route that's good enough, and they go with it.
But a quantum system.
A quantum system uses superposition to explore millions of those routing permutations at the exact same time.
And the impact of that for you, the listener, is very real. It means global logistics networks could be routed with such absolute perfection that we could slash fuel consumption and carbon emissions practically overnight.
The efficiency gains would be staggering.
And the applications in finance are just as mind-blowing. The book notes that financial institutions currently use classical Monte Carlo simulations to model risk. They essentially run a few thousand random scenarios to guess how a market shock might play out.
Right, it's a brute force approach.
But quantum algorithms can look at the entire probability space. They can analyze thousands of interlinked risk factors simultaneously, in real time, to calculate value at risk.
Yes. Whoever gets that capability first completely redraws the competitive landscape of global commerce.
Okay, but there's a very sharp double edge to this sword, isn't there?
There's a massive dark side. The exact same machine that can effortlessly navigate the infinite complexity of nature and global logistics. It can also effortlessly unravel the complex math that keeps the modern digital world secure.
This is the part of the book that honestly reads like a cyber thriller.
Oh.
Because every time you log into your bank account, send a secure email, or rely on a blockchain, you are protected by RSA encryption.
Which is the backbone of the internet.
And I never realized how simple the premise of RSA actually is. It essentially relies on the fact that it is incredibly easy for a classical computer to multiply two massive prime numbers together.
Right, it does that in a millisecond.
But it is practically impossible for a classical computer to look at the massive result and work backward to figure out what the original two primes were.
Exactly. It would literally take a supercomputer billions of years of brute force guessing to crack it.
That mathematical asymmetry is the bedrock of our digital trust. But then, in 1994...
In 1994, a mathematician named Peter Shor shattered that entire assumption.
With Shor's algorithm.
Right. He authored Shor's algorithm, which mathematically proved that a quantum computer wouldn't need to guess one by one. Instead, it uses a mechanism called quantum interference.
How did that work?
Think of it like noise-canceling headphones for math.
Okay, I like that.
The quantum computer explores all possible factors in superposition, and the algorithm is designed so that the incorrect answers destructively interfere with each other. They literally cancel each other out.
Well, the correct answer amplifies itself.
Exactly. Shor proved that a quantum machine could factor those giant numbers exponentially faster, breaking RSA encryption in hours or minutes.
Okay, but you just told me a few minutes ago that we are living in the noisy vacuum tube era of quantum hardware. These spinning coins are incredibly fragile.
They are.
Current machines are nowhere near fault-tolerant enough to run Shor's algorithm on a large scale. So why should I or anyone listening be stressed about this right now? Isn't this just a futuristic Y2K scare that we don't have to worry about for another 20 years?
This raises an incredibly important question, and the timeline is exactly what has global intelligence agencies on high alert. The threat isn't that a quantum computer will break your encryption today.
Because it can't.
Right. The threat is a strategy known as harvest now, decrypt later.
Harvest now, decrypt later. That sounds ominous.
It is. Hostile actors, state-sponsored intelligence agencies, and cybercriminal networks, they are actively vacuuming up and hoarding encrypted data right now.
Even though it's useless to them today.
Yes. They can't read it today. But they are storing vast amounts of our secure communications in massive data centers, simply waiting for the day, often referred to as Q-Day, when a fault-tolerant quantum computer finally comes online.
So the data they steal today becomes completely exposed in 10 or 15 years.
Exactly. When Q-Day arrives, they will instantly unlock decades of stored state secrets, intellectual property, and financial records.
That's terrifying.
It's why the world is desperately racing to adopt post-quantum cryptography. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, has been leading this massive, urgent global effort to finalize new classical encryption algorithms.
Algorithms that rely on math puzzles so complex that even a quantum computer can't use interference to solve them.
Exactly, that's the goal.
But actually rolling that out, I mean, upgrading every single router, satellite, server, and banking app on Earth.
Mm.
It's like trying to replace the concrete foundation of a massive skyscraper
Yeah.
while people are still living and working inside the building.
It is a monumental infrastructural challenge. And this incredible dual threat, the power to simulate miracles and the power to break all global security, it has kicked off a massive geopolitical race.
Right. Prabhakar's books break down the global strategies very impartially, and it's really fascinating to see the different philosophies at play here.
Very different approaches.
Yeah. For instance, the United States is taking a highly distributed approach. They are relying heavily on a vibrant, fiercely competitive private sector ecosystem of startups and legacy tech giants, supported by targeted federal grants.
Well, China is taking almost the exact opposite approach.
Very centralized.
Highly centralized. They are pouring massive amounts of state funding into national labs with a very specific strategic focus on building unhackable quantum encrypted communication networks across the country.
Meanwhile, the European Union is focusing its strategy on deep academic, cross-border collaboration. They are pooling the scientific resources of multiple nations to establish global standards and foster open research.
And Japan is taking yet another angle, leveraging its historic legacy of high-precision industrial manufacturing.
Focusing on the actual build quality.
Right. They are heavily focused on the engineering challenge of turning these fragile, finicky lab experiments into reliable, commercially scalable hardware. Every superpower on the board realizes that whoever controls the fault-tolerant future controls the economic and military reality of the next century.
So with all these superpowers racing for dominance, how does the financial world actually evaluate this? Because Pratakar highlights that this is a market that currently defies traditional economic gravity.
It really does.
The global quantum market generated only about $1.1 billion in 2024. In the grand scheme of tech, that is tiny.
It's a rounding error for a company like Apple.
Right. But the projected growth curve over the next decade is practically a vertical line. So how do investors build a strategy when success completely depends on unpredictable, Nobel Prize-level scientific breakthroughs that haven't even happened yet?
It requires investors to completely abandon traditional cash flow models. Private equity firms cannot look at a quantum hardware startup and demand to see quarterly recurring revenue.
Because it doesn't exist yet.
It just doesn't. Instead, smart investors have shifted their mindset to look at the broader ecosystem. They value technical durability and the accumulation of core intellectual property. Specifically, they are investing heavily in what we call the enablers.
The picks and shovels of the quantum gold rush.
Exactly. The unsung heroes of this revolution. These are the companies engineering the ultra-precise dilution refrigerators, building the laser control systems, manufacturing the specialized cryogenic cables.
And they are making money right now.
Yes. These enablers are generating real revenue today because every single research lab in the world needs their parts, regardless of whether superconducting qubits or trapped ions ultimately win the hardware race.
And there's another crucial layer to this investment strategy that I found really compelling in the sources. The hardware is basically useless without software. So investors are pouring money into companies trying to build the CUDA of quantum computing.
That is a vital piece of the puzzle. For context, CUDA was the software layer that allowed regular programmers to tap into the massive power of GPUs without needing to understand the underlying hardware architecture.
It sparked the whole AI revolution.
It did. And
Yeah.
right now, to program a quantum computer, you basically have to be a quantum physicist.
You're manually tweaking microwave pulses and laser frequencies.
Right. It's incredibly tedious. So whoever builds the software abstraction layer, the interface that lets a normal software developer write a program in Python and have it seamlessly translate into quantum operations,
That company strikes gold.
that company will essentially own the operating system of the next computing era.
So what does this all mean for us, for the everyday listener? Will you and I be heading to the store to buy a MacBook Quantum in 5 or 10 years?
No. And this is a crucial reality check that Prabhakar highlights beautifully in the Compute Shift. Quantum will never be a personal consumer device.
Never.
Never. The physics simply dictate that it requires environments colder than deep space or complex laser vacuums. You aren't putting that in a laptop on your kitchen table.
Fair point.
Instead, we are entering what he calls the hybrid compute era. Quantum processors, artificial intelligence accelerators, and high-performance classical supercomputers are all converging into a single, unified, shared infrastructure.
So it's going to operate more like the electric grid or the railway system.
That is the exact model. You won't own the quantum computer. You will tap into a massive hybrid cloud platform.
How does that work in practice?
Well, when an enterprise or a researcher submits a massive complex problem, the cloud platform will act as an orchestrator. It will automatically route the mundane data preparation to a classical server rack.
Okay.
It will send the heavy pattern recognition to an AI cluster. And then it will seamlessly hand off the hyper-complex combinatorial piece of the puzzle to a quantum processor for a few microseconds.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a symphony of entirely different architectures working in perfect harmony right behind the scenes.
So to recap this wild journey we've been on, we've talked about how the absolute physical limits of shrinking silicon forced humanity to look at the spinning coins of qubits.
The physical wall.
Right. We've explored the incredibly fragile water drops of the current hardware race and the unbelievable thrill of finally being able to speak nature's native language to invent new drugs and materials.
It's an inspiring future.
It is.
Yeah.
But we've also stared down the ticking clock of Q-Day and the geopolitical chess match happening right now to control this entirely new frontier.
It is a profound, foundational shift in what humanity is capable of.
And the craziest part to me is that this transition isn't waiting for some distant sci-fi future. It is happening right now. It is quietly unfolding in heavily guarded cloud data centers and refrigerated university labs right in the background of your daily life.
It really is. And, if we pull back and look at the biggest picture possible, this technology leaves us with a lingering, almost philosophical question to consider.
I love this part of the discussion.
Yeah. For centuries, human progress has been driven by the traditional scientific method. It relies on human intuition, formulating a hypothesis, building a physical experiment, testing it, failing, and trying again.
It's a deeply human, deeply iterative process.
Exactly. But if we successfully build a fault-tolerant machine that can explore possibility spaces far, far beyond the limits of human imagination.
A machine that can discover new materials, optimize impossible logistical systems, and design biological cures entirely autonomously.
Right. What happens to human creativity? Does the intrinsic meaning of scientific discovery diminish when the machine is doing the imagining for us? Or does it free us from the grunt work, allowing us to ask entirely different, more profound questions?
That is exactly the kind of question we are all going to have to answer, and probably much sooner than any of us thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the rapidly evolving world around you, because the light switch isn't just on or off anymore. The coin is spinning, and we are all just waiting to see where it lands.